Hey, and welcome back to the #1 podcast in the world, the Cellarcast, episode 159. Let me tell you something. I'm having a great time. I love being on YouTube so much. I'm gonna open this up with a little bit of a vent sesh, as they call it. I made some vent art that I posted on Twitter when this happened, because it upset me a lot. But I just like to tell you guys, because maybe you guys like to be informed about what's going on. Also, I need something easy to talk about that I can just kind of rattle off so that my brain can get going so that I can talk good for the podcast. So, you might have heard that the Tender Loving Care video, the most recent video on my channel, had a couple problems when it came to YouTube's automated systems. At first, it got age restricted, which was a real bummer. That's why I made the family-friendly version to upload after it. You know, got way less views on that, but hey, whatever. It's there. It still exists for you to watch. Well, I thought that was the end of it until a few nights ago when I got a notification. I was fresh out of the shower, was ready to lay down in bed, you know, relax. And it always happens at night when I'm like about to go to sleep. When I'm like about to go to bed and call it a day, right? It always happens. I got an email and it said, "Oops, your video has been removed. Your channel's been removed for a community guidelines violation." So it wasn't enough to age restrict it. For some reason, this video was stepped up to a community guidelines restriction on sex and nudity, right? Which I thought was bullshit. I thought it was horseshit. Because, okay, here's the thing. So here's what happens. Here was what happened, in case you weren't aware. This is my first time through this process. So here's what went down. Basically, they tell me that in my little YouTube studio friggin' dashboard thing. And then they're like, okay, so this is not a strike. This is a warning. It's a community guidelines warning. The warning will stick on your channel. It will stay on your channel unless you do this like re-education class to make sure you're educated about our guidelines and following them. And if you do that class, if you take that little course, then the warning will go away after 90 days. However, as long as there's a warning on your channel, if you get another similar kind of warning takedown thing, that will equal a strike. And strikes are forever. And it's 3 strikes and you're out. Your channel gets deleted. So that's obviously bad, right? Now, I don't plan on breaking the YouTube terms of service guidelines or the content guidelines anytime soon. I didn't mean to break them when I made this video, but I guess they decided that I did. So here's the thing, right? This is not this class. It took like 7 minutes or something. It was a couple questions. Every single question is something along the lines of, hey, here's a scenario, all written out in text. Hey, here's a scenario where something related to the sex and nudity policy, right? And then they give you the scenario and they have you check a box of yes, this violates the guidelines, or no, this does not violate guidelines. And I don't know if it was just for me, but it seems like every single question they give you, the person in the question in this hypothetical is not breaking terms of service content guidelines. And look, if you were just honest, if they were just, I wouldn't be so upset about it if they just said no nipples. You just don't show a woman's nipples on screen. If they were just honest about that and said, that's what the policy is, don't do that, I would be like, fine, you know? All right, I fucked up. I got a little too artsy-fartsy up my ass about, like, oh, what counts as porno? Whatever, okay, fine. I knew I was doing something kind of edgy. But to put me through this thing where every single scenario they were giving me in this little questionnaire, that where this person is not breaking the guidelines, every single thing is something I did. I gave context as to what the footage was and the context of the nudity. I said where it came from. I said who made it. I said what's going on. I explained that it wasn't sexual in nature. The reason it was in the video was for artistic purposes. It was the most effective way to communicate the idea of voyeurism and asking the audience when something becomes sexual. I put the original footage. I got it. There's a video on YouTube. I put the original in the description. I put the link to it. Look, if you need me, and what's so frustrating about this is, I'm getting worked up again over it. What's so frustrating about it is like, okay, fine, all right, I fucked up, whatever. I know you guys have the tools to let me fix it. What was the problem? Was it that there was a nipple? I know you guys have blurring tools. I know that. Was it because I didn't list out enough details in the description about the original thing, right? Just let me edit the description. Just let me add those details in. They won't let me do that. It won't count. They won't take it into account in the appeal. None of that works. It's just there is like no, despite having, I don't even know what the fucking point of the appeal process is if they don't give you any of the tools to correct what you've done wrong. I don't get it, right? Because if you think about it, wouldn't that be in their best interest? The whole reason they do this shit is to make themselves seem more advertiser friendly, because fucking old media is like hitch the rides to old media and shit. It's all for advertiser friendliness. And so so my video is not in a state where it can be monetized. It's in a state where it is not child friendly. Well, if I fix it so that it's following the guidelines, maybe I could run ads on it. I won't, but maybe I could. Maybe someone else would, right? Who uses ads as their main source of monetization. Maybe someone would, right? But you don't give me the chance to do that. I don't know why. I have to wonder. All right, so people who work like real jobs, right? Do you get this at your work? Do you feel like your life is being toyed with by the whims of an absent god who's laid down these things like I feel like a fucking caveman looking at a volcano exploding, a mile away from my home, and I'm like, man, what the fuck? Why did it have to? Who laid this out? Who decided this? I guess, the caveman probably shouldn't have built his home there, but you know what I'm talking about, right? That really pissed me off. So, the repeal got rejected. The appeal got rejected. I don't know what to do. The video's gone. It's gone forever. I can still look at it in my dashboard and stuff, and everyone who left comments on it, they're still there, locked away. However, the video is never coming back on YouTube, on this channel at least, at the URL that it was at. However, the family-friendly version is still up, which proves that it wasn't a fucking big deal anyway, right? It was literally just the blurring. Like, that must have been the whole problem. It had to have been the blurring, because it's the only thing that's changed in the family-friendly edition. It had to have been the blurring. So, I lost like 1,000 views on my channel, which for me really hurts. That stings. So that sucked ass. Yeah. That was annoying as fuck, but at least it's still there. And most of the people who I guess were gonna, because I don't think that's a video that, I don't know, maybe it wouldn't have taken off. I don't think that video is ever gonna take off. I should make stuff that I think will be successful. I should make less stuff for me. So, mate, I'll just cope with it and say that most of the people who were going to see it had already seen it, and it had whatever impact on them that it needed to. So, whatever. Let's get into comments. Let's get into something a little more positive. Hopefully, maybe, I don't know. I've got my notes here for this episode, and I don't know, we got a weird one today. Anyway, let's start off with a comment. We have a comment from Crust. I know Crust from being on Twitter when they accidentally spread a hoax that during Evo, Hotashi had gone up to Sajam and said, "Yo, Sajam, you know you're my Nilla, right?" And then Sajam said, "Alrighty then." And then I think both of them had to say that they didn't actually do that. And I was like, "Hey, that's that guy who comments on my videos. Awesome, epic hoax." Anyway, it's Crust. He says, she says, they say, it do. "Yo, I always half write comments and end up deleting them for various reasons, including the primal horror of being perceived. But, having been inspired by the TLC video, I wanted to really try and put out a message to you. Thank you so much. I'm glad that it had some kind of positive effect on you, which I define as giving me content in the form of leaving questions. Your content has been a joy to watch grow since I found your channel. I look forward to your new projects and can't wait for more people to find and appreciate your work. Thank you very much." Again. Persona 3 mentioned. "Reload was certainly not necessary, but it was so good. I fully expected..." I put the weird emphasis on that. We talked about remakes last time. "Reload was certainly not necessary, but it was so good. I fully expected it to be fine. Another version of Persona 3 with its own pros and cons like the rest, but they really did it justice. The way I said it when I was playing it was, finally I can recommend Persona 3 to people with no asterisks." That's actually good. That's what I felt when the pixel remasters of, specifically FF6 came out. Because the best way to play FF6 before that was very, I don't know, it was a little too, it wasn't hard, but it was kind of stupid. It was through an emulator with like a hacked version of the ROM to restore the good sound quality. It was just dumb. I do agree that the remake craze is a bit overblown and that a good remaster, or even honestly just a good re-release, is all these older games really need. But getting a truly good remake is a kind of high that I understand why people want to chase. Yeah, again, if FF6 got the FF7 remake treatment, it doesn't need it, but I would be hype. I would love to see that. It would be cool. Question. Finally, the question. We get into it. Would you ever consider making a Discord? I know it's a generic content creator TM move and potentially a bigger hassle than it's worth, but I know that I personally, as someone who tends to mostly lurk in the big scary public spaces, would love a quieter, more private place to share little comments and would just kind of like to hang out and chat more casually with other Cellar heads. In conclusion, Cellarcast now, or I will tell the Yakuza about your video. Have a nice day. Well, thank you. I hope you have a nice day, too. Well, to answer your question, you're not actually the first person who has approached me about that. In fact, I want to say a year or 2 years ago, I got an email from someone who asked if I had ever planned on making a Discord or a subreddit or something. And at that time, I told them no. And it was a hell no. And it's the answer is still no. But there's an asterisk there. So the answer is no, and my reasoning from now is the same as back then. The reason being that I do not want to take on the responsibility of managing a Discord server. It seems like a big pain in the ass. Even if people are cool, right? I just know how, you know, what am I trying to say? Statistics? Is that the word? Probability. Probability guarantees that eventually there's just going to be like problems, and I'm going to be real. I don't want to deal with that shit as the owner. I don't like the so when you make like a public Discord server, I think that you have to have this is how I look at it. Maybe this is crazy, but if I was making a Discord server, I would make that with the agreement in my mind, that the understanding in my mind that I am opening up a channel for like a child to be groomed. Right? Like that's the worst case scenario. And I think, okay, if two people meet and one of them is like 15 and one of them is like 25, and the 25-year-old like grooms the 15-year-old in DMs, right? Am I okay with taking on that kind of a responsibility? And the answer is nope. No, I'm not. So, and And I don't want to like ask people to moderate it because it's just such a, I don't know, it's a pain in the ass. That's it. It's a hassle, as you say, it's a hassle. However, there is one public YouTuber Discord that I am a part of, and this is kind of like I've kept this a secret, but just because you asked, I will let the listeners of the podcast know. So I am frequently on the live stream of my friend Prox. I sometimes tweet him out. I haven't tweeted out that I've been on his stream in a while. He's on my channel though, unlike my list of. I think I have him under friends. I'm pretty sure. Do I? I think I do. He live streams every Thursday right now, and I am frequently on his live stream as like the co-host. And he has a public Discord server that actually does have a couple other people who have found his stream through me and then joined that server. So it's kind of like, it's the only Discord server I'm actually active on because I'm not a very Discordy guy. It's just because Prox is my friend, and there's like people who, I have other friends on there and people who are viewers and stuff. And I don't know, it's just kind of fun. I don't have the social battery to want to deal with more than 2 Discord servers at one time. So, yeah, you can get. So it's in like the description of all of his streams and the probably I think is about or something. I have him channel boxed, right? I should. Oh, I still call it channel boxing. Aren't I an old man referencing a feature from YouTube for like? When did they take that out? There was always, I hate it. I hate that there used to be a dedicated spot where you could put channels. Everything had dedicated spots. Yeah, okay, it's right. It's on my, if you go to like my YouTube like main section, featured channels friends. There it is, and his channel's there, and you can go check out his Discord server from there. I'm in there. I am a moderator. I never really moderate. It's not really, I don't know. It's not big enough to warrant that. But yeah, if you guys want to go to like a YouTuber zoo and like throw peanuts at me through a glass enclosure, you can go there. But yeah, a personal Cellar Discord, nah, or an official one. So that's my thing. Hey, if anybody wants to create an unofficial Cellar Tigan Moon Discord server or subreddit or whatever, fine, go ahead. I welcome you too. But it is not. I would like you to clarify that it's unofficial and it doesn't have my blessing, and I can be cool with it or whatever. But it won't get my blessing because I don't want that. I don't want that liability on me. Speaking very pragmatically now, I don't want that kind of a liability. So, yeah, go ahead. And yeah, I don't want to be like a moderator on it. I don't want to have any responsibility for that kind of a thing. Don't put that on me. But if you want to make something unofficial, then anyone's free to. I don't care. Have 100 different Cellar subreddits to talk about. I don't know what you guys would talk about. Yeah, so thank you so much for the question. And if you would like to leave a question, if you have a question for me, I will definitely get back to it. You can leave it in the comments, and I always get to the questions. It's easy content. Hey, so I'm going to talk about the weirdest story, perhaps the weirdest gaming-related story of the year. All right. This is an article by Grant Stoner, published on IGN. The title might spoil things, but I also think it's a great hook. A prominent accessibility advocate worked with studios and inspired change, but she never actually existed. All right, so you might have some questions. So we talk sometimes about accessibility in games. Accessibility can mean a lot of things. It can mean color blindness options. It can mean subtitles, sound options. It can mean different methods for input, right? Street Fighter 6's modern mode, there's some people who have arthritis or something like that, and modern mode means that they can actually play the game without getting like pain within like 20 minutes, right? Accessibility, it's cool. It's generally a good thing. It's good that more games have moved towards that because it benefits people who have certain disabilities or whatever. And also, I'm just an options freak. And sometimes accessibility options are just good options to have in general. I remember back playing League of Legends, everyone played with certain accessibility settings on because it actually increased visibility on certain effects, like changing health bar colors and changing certain visual effects so they blended in less with the background. Like, it's I think it's very rare that an accessibility feature is like an active negative on the game. I can't really think of one. I don't know. People complain about like easy modes. I guess that's an accessibility setting, but or an accessibility feature. But also, like, you don't have to engage with it. Getting a little sidetracked. All I'm saying is accessibility is cool, and there are a certain number of people. So first of all, in order to really be an expert on accessibility, we're talking generally, it kind of requires a specific interest and also skill set. A lot of people in our daily lives don't think about disabled people unless you have someone in your life or you yourself have some sort of disability. So it's just not something at the forefront of a lot of people's minds. It is not something that it's not a booming scene, right? Where everyone's trying to get into accessibility. And that's for, in general, that's for like, oh, I'm going to make a public space. I'm going to make this train station easier for a blind person to walk around in, something like that. When you get into a niche like video game accessibility, gets even more narrow of who's in there. So it's a pretty small world, and a lot of people in the gaming accessibility space, people who are advocates, who are experts, who are coordinators and all that, a lot of them know each other. And back in 2015, a certain person appeared on Twitter who went by the account One Odd Gamer Girl. Real name was Susan Banks, who was basically there to share the perspective. I'm going to be slightly quoting from the article and slightly summarizing. Share from the perspective of a deaf, Muslim, queer, disabled gamer nerd. So we got a couple things going on there, right? Now that is a lot of minority groups to belong to. Therefore, if you are someone who is in the accessibility scene, you can probably gain a lot of valuable insight from someone who is like deaf or belongs to a certain religion that's not a majority in like the United States, something like that, right? So this person, Susan Banks, would regularly post about basically all the things that she had to deal with, the way that it applied to gaming and certain challenges that she had, or maybe certain sensitivities that someone who doesn't belong to that group, just all that stuff. So she's got this whole backstory about being from Turkey, immigrating to Chicago, Susan Banks, and getting into video games, right? So let's say a hobbyist in the realm of accessibility, just kind of writing about their own experiences. Now, because this was such a specialized experience, she got some attention from places like Ubisoft. So she ended up getting a lot of interviews, writing a lot of articles on Medium, and making a bit of a name for herself in the accessibility space. This is in 2015, let's say late 2010s-ish, right? Over the course of like a year or two. She was very active on social media. She had she would advise on several games and all that, and actually became fairly influential in terms of like there were features that she recommended and certain advice that she gave that, according to this article, did make it into games. Now, enter our second character, someone by the name of Coty Craven. I thought that was a weird name. C-O-T-Y, Craven, Coty Craven. Not Cody, Coty. And then I found out it's a trans guy, and I was like, oh, trans name. Okay. Fanfiction name. Okay. So Coty Craven meets Susan Banks. They meet by happenstance and eventually develop a romantic relationship with each other. This happens pretty quickly, right? That they start dating each other. All right, I'm going to read this paragraph word for word. Within months of Craven's introduction to Banks, Craven claimed Banks had been hospitalized after dropping a KitchenAid mixer on her foot, according to both an anonymous former business associate of Craven's I spoke to and my own past conversations with Craven. So I heard, like, she was hospitalized after dropping a mixer. And I thought, like, a mixer? Let me make sure I'm thinking of the right thing, because I think I am. And I looked up a picture, and yes, it is just a regular mixer, maybe the size of a little bigger than a coffee maker. So if you dropped a KitchenAid mixer on your foot, you might think, like, okay, well, at worst, probably broke some bones. Pretty unpleasant, pretty painful. But not the end of the world. Several hours later, her leg was allegedly amputated. And nearly 48 hours after the first operation, her other leg was amputated as well. She dropped it on both feet. What? Okay, so now when you hear that, you're like, what? What the fuck? What do you mean she dropped a mixer on her foot and had to get both legs cut off? So this anonymous person, who the author of the article contacted, heard about this. I don't know if they knew the full details, but they heard that Susan Banks had some kind of accident, was in the hospital, and apparently had to get something amputated. They think, oh my god, I am going to send her a gift. I'm going to send her a gift. So, she contacts, or they contact, I don't know their gender. I don't know who they are. They contact the hospital that supposedly Susan went to, the West Suburban Medical Center in Oak Park, Illinois. And they say, hey, I'd like to send Susan Banks some flowers. I'd like to send her a gift. And they go, who? No, Susan Banks. She's in certain. She had this. She was in the hospital 3 days ago, and she's still in there. We don't have anyone. We've never heard of anyone like that. There's no one in our records. No one came in here named Susan Banks. No one came in here named Coty Craven. And they were like, what? That's weird. That's strange. So they start seeking some third-party opinions, because this was like quite a shock. This was really weird. And it starts to, you start to wonder, like, okay, so they say that Craven, so weirdly enough, once Banks and Craven entered into a relationship, Craven started posting a lot about his girlfriend and his and whenever she got sick and when she got better. And mind you, there were no pictures. There were no pictures of Banks besides like a profile picture. There were no pictures of her. She never appeared on video. She never did video interviews. And the thing is, that's not the weirdest thing in the world, because she was supposedly deaf, right? It's not weird for a deaf person to prefer speaking or giving an interview over text, like email or DMs or something like that, right? So that wasn't seen as very strange. And for the most part, people just, who were aware of her, just figured, oh, well, you know, it's just they're deaf. Craven is not deaf, so he maybe does some representation for her and all that, and will communicate on her behalf and things of that sort. And every single time that he says, "Oh, Susan got better," is just showered in gifts and praise about what a good partner he is and all that. So this third party, this anonymous third party, thinks this is a little weird and a little, you know, that triggers some alarm bells. So they hire a private investigator. I'll quote. The goal of the investigation was to find concrete proof of Banks' existence. Several days later, the investigator returned with no information. No immigration record, address, employment record, marriage license, or birth certificate was found. They were supposed to be married, actually. It wasn't just the girlfriend. They were married. Banks, according to the investigator, was not a real person. IGN received the receipt of the investigation and can confirm the source was billed for these services. So, at that point, open and shut. You'd think, right? This is not a real-ass person. This is getting really fucking weird. But still, Banks continues to be a prominent figure online. In the space of accessibility and all that. Still getting interviews, still advising on things. Still contributing to organizations and associations and all of this stuff. And then suddenly in 2019, Craven announces that Banks had died. Shockingly, it was not known what she died of. It was not known exactly. Oh, sorry, hang on. Hang on, sorry, I was wrong. There are some details about her death. Craven claimed that Banks died while playing games from a stroke. So she had a stroke while playing video games. In another private text conversation with a different individual viewed by IGN, Craven claimed she died while streaming and that at least one other person had a clip of her death. So none of this exists, by the way. Just a spoiler. None of this exists. Susan Banks was not a real person. She did not die of a stroke. She did not die while streaming video games. There was not a person who clipped her death. This is all stuff that Cody Craven made up, assumedly for some sort of dramatic sympathy points. No obituary was uncovered for a person fitting the description of Susan Banks in Oak Park, Illinois. Absolutely absurd. Dude, she had an award named after her. In 2019, after her death, there was an award by what was the specific organization? I believe it was Can I Play That? Which is a gaming accessibility for disabled people thing, right? They named the Susan Banks Advocacy Award. Sponsored by Ubisoft. Ubisoft, by the way, who covered up the rapes of multiple female staff by their upper management to protect them from legal troubles. Remember when no one talked about that? Remember when everyone got mad remember when all those guys got really fucking baby rage mad about Yasuke in Assassin's Creed Shadows, and you're like, hey, did you know that Ubisoft covered up real rapes that happened? And they're like, I don't care about that. I care about the black man in my beautiful Japan. I'm getting off track. Fucking Ubisoft. This section is titled Profiting from Alleged Lives. So, several weeks before Banks' death, Craven created a GoFundMe for the launch of Can I Play That, a website dedicated to reviewing games and analyzing the industry from an accessibility lens, which was announced on both their social media account and the one allegedly managed by Banks. After Craven announced that Banks had died, organizations like Able Gamers directly shared the GoFundMe campaign, encouraging others to donate in her memory. Oh, this is like going to hell level of shit. This is going to super hell level of absolute scumbaggery. Craven used the sympathy generated by Banks' death to push himself into the spotlight. For years, he continually posted on social media about her passing, her legacy, and her impact on the industry. These conversations continued through numerous recognition profiles about Craven. He even had the opportunity to publish stories about his experience with grief. Can you believe that? Can you believe that this guy is getting credit? Like, people are writing bios about him, and they're describing him with Susan Banks, the fake person that he made up, and then he writes an article about his grief. Oh my god, you deserve to get beat up. You deserve to get fucking beat up. I wasn't gonna say that. Oh, okay, I'll say okay. Maybe Cody Craven deserves to get a little bit of maybe Cody Craven deserves to share their own experiences as a gamer in a wheelchair. That's all I'm saying. Let's go to afterwards. Now, all of this is absolutely insane, right? Fucking guy made up a fake Muslim, disabled, queer, deaf woman, gamer girl. Oh, my neck. I got some evil spirits out with that one. She says that she dies, does some elaborate roleplay that she dies, and then profits off of her death. Now, would you believe he did it again? Enter Tubi Hamid. So, anytime Craven would post on social media, both Banks and this Tubi Hamid person would comment on his posts. And there's a beautiful love story here about how after Banks' death, Craven and Hamid came together and realized that they had a special bond, and they bonded over the death of this fictional person. Now, Tubi Hamid is... Let's see, can we get a description of Hamid and their particular arsenal of identities? Well, also, I think a Muslim woman. I think they're also supposed to be a Muslim lady. Someone from Kate Sanchez, who is the co-founder of But Why Though, which is like a news website, recalls what it was like to interact with Hamid's account through private messages with Craven and other conversations. They said, I had interactions with Tubi quite a bit on Twitter, always around race and disability as well. I've been very vocal about the importance of including non-white people in the disability and accessibility space, and Tubi would often have the same views or echo them. Beyond Twitter, Craven would relay messages between me and Tubi, usually around race and disability. I want to add a little detail in here that I forgot. Cody Craven is white, so he is actually role-playing as like a Middle Eastern woman and being like, oh yeah, we got to have more non-white voices in games accessibility. In 2021, Can I Play That ran a story with Hamid's byline, published and edited by Craven, detailing her experience as a deaf person of color in the gaming industry. The story details her connection with Banks and even advertises Craven's work and business ventures. That year, her story was nominated for the Best Journalism Award by the Game Accessibility Conference. Throughout this time, Craven also acted as a dude, he fucking made a fake girlfriend and then gave his fake girlfriend an award. He was a judge. However, during this period, Hamid suddenly disappeared, deactivating her social media accounts and leaving the industry. Enter. Now, would you believe that he did it a third time? Enter Deb Vaughan? I don't know how that's pronounced. Craven's, reading from the article, Craven's alleged third partner was introduced to the public in 2023, once again on social media platforms like Twitter. Unlike Banks and Hamid, Deborah, or Deb, Vaughan, has no Twitter account of her own. Good idea. Instead, updating people through self-published stories on Medium, as well as anecdotes given by Craven. According to private conversations between myself and Craven, Vaughan was allegedly a close friend of Banks, and the two reconnected after Banks' death. Oh, sorry. Oh, I got them mixed up. So Tubi was just some kind of, some I don't know, some floozy. Just some floozy. Craven and Vaughan reconnected after Banks' death. Similar to Banks and Hamid, there are no pictures of Craven and Vaughan together. Instead, so there's no pictures of them. Instead, Craven just posts their cute little text conversations together that they have, and the profile picture that he has set for her is an edited stock photo. They have a link to the original stock photo. Vaughan was instrumental with the creation of Craven's latest venture, the Game Content Triggers Database, a source that volunteers and developers can use to display potentially triggering themes, scenes, or objects in games. Her presence in the industry is relatively isolated to her Medium page and activity within the database's Discord server. Like the previous two partners, stories about representation were crucial to Vaughan's work in the industry. According to Vaughan's introductory post within the Discord server, as well as an article published on the database by Craven, she is a registered therapist specializing in PTSD and trauma. Dude, why do you keep making these people who have things that you could easily look up? She has a, quote, long background in psychology and mental health and is also, quote, deaf, so I know a bit about ableism. Her posts extensively explore topics like mental health themes in games, racism, the disabled experience as a deaf person of color, and more recently, experiencing life while receiving intense cancer treatments for stage 3B colorectal cancer. Oh my god, you're going to triple hell, dude. Dude, you're going to like Mondo hell. Holy shit. Much like Banks and Hamid, I don't know if that's how you pronounce that. I've just been saying Hamid. IGN was unable to find any individual who had seen her in person or on a video call. IGN was also unable to find a registered therapist by the name of Deborah Vaughan or Damaris Burl Vaughan fitting her description in Michigan, Illinois, or her supposed home state of Missouri. According to Sanchez, Vaughan's presence in the industry is intrinsically tied to her race. This is beyond the pale. This is like a, okay. I knew specifically that Coty had messaged me asking for non-white people to be involved because per Coty's words, it was only white people who volunteered their time. There's a lot of layers going on here. I wanted to provide the depth and exploration, at least for my identity, which is Latina. I only found out that Cody had a partner named Deb after I joined the database and tried having conversations about race there. Cody had messaged me that Deb was his new partner and was going to be central in diversifying who was contributing to the database. Craven claims he was in talks to sell the database to companies like Amazon based on messages between Kate Sanchez and Craven. No further conversations about an acquisition occurred after that message. Amazon declined to comment. So his fucking big business plan was to invent fake black women to roleplay as, to make up real, like, lived experiences of being, like, disabled and black and shit. Faking being a doctor and a licensed therapist. And then use that to grow the profile of the database that he created so that he could sell it to Amazon as a business venture. Brother, what happened to you? What? Were you always like this? Just absolutely crazy. Just insane. There's some other stories about how like this fake Vaughan person, who we all know is fake. Like, let's go to she's fake. It's a fake person. Everyone knows that at this point. Wrote an article that ended up about like Spider-Man 2, the Insomniac game that got the attention of one of the developers, and just like getting actual industry attention, and just despite not having a social media account like Craven's previous partners, Vaughan's alleged life and family drew the attention of thousands throughout Craven's social media account. Okay, dude, this is so fucked up. So would you believe that he did it a fourth time? Enter Bess, Vaughan's mother. Craven is not dating Bess. However, Vaughan's mother is supposedly a 96-year-old woman who fell in love with gaming in her late 90s and started playing Breath of the Wild, and everyone's like, "Aw, epic wholesome Reddit moment." Bess passed away on Monday evening, peacefully in her sleep at 97. So it feels appropriate to share this essay about her love of Breath of the Wild again. Spend some time sharing games with someone you love this week. This happened a couple months. This was about 8 months after that post. After Bess was introduced to the world. Vaughan's introductory interview, published by Craven on the database website, explicitly mentions Craven's relationship with Bess, citing it as integral to the founding of the site. IGN was unable to find an obituary for a woman fitting the description of Bess in Missouri during the alleged time of her death. Vaughan's mentions on Craven's social media and activity within the database Discord have largely ceased since March. Her last message to the server noted that both her and Craven were incredibly busy with work and had not abandoned the project. However, their involvement with the database has yet to be seen. As of June, she was still active on her Medium page, publishing an article exploring EMDR therapy. Yeah. So, now you might assume, I believe Craven, since this article was posted, has basically nuked everything that he's ever done and gone private on everything and closed the Discord and I think even the website might be down at this point. Holy shit. What a fucking bizarre story. What a weird story. I was shocked that no one was talking about this. Probably because regular gamers, like, I don't know. I feel like it's a lot harder to rage bait about a situation like this than, I don't know. So there's a black guy in Assassin's Creed? What? Oh my god, I care so much about this. I'm gonna sign a petition. I'm gonna sign a petition about this. And it's like, bro, there was a fucking guy. There was a white guy who pretended to be two Muslim women and one whole black woman who were like disabled and gay and shit. And he just did that for like almost 10 years. The Susan Banks account started in 2015. He did that for 10 years. In order to basically con the gaming accessibility space, who, like, have to be like the most well-meaning people in the world. Like, I'm sure it's not a job that pays. It's all like it's all volunteer work. It's just for people who want like disabled people to have a better time playing video games. Infiltrate them and dupe them into believing his all his shit. Fucking faked that one of them had died. That two different women. I forgot he made 4 women. He made 4 women. Also, just there is something so weird going on there with the race thing. I don't know exactly how to approach that, but the whole like white guy pretending to be black women and Muslim women and Middle Eastern, like, it's so weird. It's really weird. And the fact that they're all like that is so, I don't know, dude. There's a real master manipulator. Master manipulator. I love how Kendrick, you can tell that he like recorded all those songs in the same session, because he says he's got really into the way that he always pronounces it master manipulator. He always pronounces it the same way. That's it's so crazy, because I'm sure if you're working in this field, you probably don't expect this, you know? You probably don't expect that someone so vile could be lurking in there, or that they could be doing any of this. Like, not if it was me, not in my wildest dreams would I ever have predicted that, right? Like, you never see that shit in volunteer work, and then you hear about how he's gonna sell the website and all of this, and you're like, oh my god, you're just a scumbag. You're just a scumbag. And I don't know. It's like it really calls into question. I mean, this was someone who was giving real developers advice, like sensitivity stuff, like how do we depict different cultures that we might not be very knowledgeable on in a way that isn't like accidentally really ignorant. And he's just a white guy. He's just pretending. That's crazy. Do you think anything made it like into a game or something? I can't imagine sitting down and writing all of these fucking articles that he wrote. Like, you just, the idea of like putting yourself in someone else's shoes, which I guess he was very good at, but like putting myself in his shoes, like oh my god, holy shit, he should have been a ghostwriter. Absolutely beyond the pale. One of the strangest stories I have read in a while. And what lessons can we take from this? I don't even know. Besides, what the fuck? I doubt anyone will ever, like, in the history of time, ever go to these lengths again. I don't think this is going to become an endemic, like an epidemic thing in the gaming accessibility space. I don't think people are going to have to be on the lookout for that. But it does kind of suck that this is such a massive, ridiculous betrayal. If I belong to any of those groups that this fucking guy wrote these articles about under these identities, and I read an article that like really touched me, and then I found out that it was fake, I don't know how I'd feel. I'd be whacked out at the very least. Just strange. One of the weirdest long cons I've ever seen. How did he think he could keep getting away with it? I guess because no one mentioned. I guess because he really just took advantage of people being good-natured. Which is like maybe one of the most despicable parts of it. Is that's the only way it could have worked. Right? Like, I remember in... What game was it? Was it Overwatch? Was it League of Legends? There was some like e-sport where some team announced that they were signing a player who was it was a girl, some female player who were pretty rare as far as those games, as far as professional esports goes. And what was weird about it was that it was a weird situation, because they announced that like it was okay, so it's like this girl and they're signing her, and the situation was really strange because there was like no intro video that they would usually do, that the org would usually do. There was no bio, there were no pictures of this person. They would only be playing online, and it like the history of their ranked account was really strange. And so you get that, and then you get the mixed, like, the weird, like, there's a weird, like, gender dynamic thing with gamers, right? Capital G gamers. So there's, like, you know, it was a weird situation, and it was even weirder because she ended up being fake. It was actually a guy who was, I think, had been banned or something. Maybe I should research this before I talk about it. But it was a guy who was either banned or for some, I don't know why, decided to get back into playing professionally under a fake name and identity. And I don't know, maybe he thought that like pretending to be a girl would make people less suspicious. But there were so many context clues that raised people's question mark flags that they ended up investigating it and exposing it. What a strange situation. What a weird case. Anyway, that's the story of Susan Banks and Coty Craven. What did someone say? I forget what the term is, but it's like when someone's name, when someone lives up to their name, because Craven means cowardly, and Coty Craven is certainly a coward. Speaking of cowardice, let's talk about Secret Level. I don't know how that's supposed to be cowardly. I actually didn't come up with a good. I didn't come up with a good segue, so I don't know why I attempted it. They announced Gamescom happened. Bunch of cool stuff got shown off. The only one there was, in terms of talking about stuff for the podcast, the one that gripped me the most as just what was an Amazon Prime original series, Secret Level, an anthology series by the same studio that made a different anthology series a couple years ago. I think they've actually made a couple of them at this point. They made, what are they called? It's the do they have the name of the people? This fucking Forbes article didn't have the name of the damn, is it Amazon MGM studio? I don't know. Why didn't they just say who made it? Anyway, it's the people who made Love, Death, and Robots, which was on Netflix, which was also like an anthology series of shorts that was like sci-fi, right? Secret Level is going to be a similar anthology. It'll be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 episodes. Each one focusing on a different property. Let's go through the list and see what they chose. All right, number 1, Pac-Man. Okay, I mean, in terms of lore, it's a bit of a blank slate. I guess you could say that about it. Warhammer 40,000. Not really a video game, but cool. I'd be down for a cool CG animated Warhammer thing that's like a decent length that isn't that fucking Ultramarines movie. Oh my god, I never talked about that. There's like a terrible? There's a pretty bad Warhammer 40k movie. It's like a CG movie. It's only an hour, but it feels way longer than that. It's called Ultramarines, I think, and it's free to watch on YouTube. I made Kat watch it with me, and it was not good. It's about 20 minutes of story stretched out into being an hour long, and it really, really hurts. It really should have been a short. And what's funny is that it was written by Dan Abnett, and I was like, that's weird. Dan Abnett usually writes pretty great stories. Like he's one of the safest bets when it comes to 40k books, right? I've got a lot of Dan Abnett books on my shelf back there. Dan Abnett's he's kind of one of the goats of Warhammer books. So it's weird that he wrote such a subpar screenplay. And then I was thinking about it, and I was like, the plot of Ultramarines is almost beat for beat the plot of A Ghost Returns, which is a short story that he wrote about Ibram Gaunt, the main character of his Gaunt's Ghost series, which is one of his main 40k series. So like, I guess he just wrote it. It is like it's basically the same plot, but with Ultramarines. Really strange. I guess they just made him. I don't know. I don't know what the deal was with that. Because it's funny because I think about it and like that story. It's a great short story. It's like 20 pages. Great introduction to Gaunt as a character. Really cool. Good mystery. Good reveal. Great tension. And then it's like 20 pages long. And I think, oh, that's like maybe a 20-30 minute short film. Oh no. Unreal Tournament is another one of the things that another one of the series. Okay, interesting. I'm surprised it wasn't like, if you're going with Epic, I mean, when I think of like Epic Worlds, let me refresh mine. I'm surprised it wasn't like Fortnite. You know, I'm surprised that of all the games to set, because Fortnite has lore. They got lore, you know? What other games does Epic have that isn't Unreal? They made Fall Guys. List of games by Epic Games. I should really know this. I'm going to have a lot of aha moments. They have ZZT. Don't you guys know? They have ZZT. ZZT. They have Jill of the Jungle. They have Jazz Jackrabbit. They have Jazz Jackrabbit. They have Extreme Pinball. Gears of War. Infinity Blade, even? I don't know. Fortnite. Gears of War. Infinity Blade. That could just be like a Dark Souls, you know, ripoff. That would be cool. But no, they went with Unreal. Interesting. I kind of respect it. New World Eternum. And you're like, first of all, I imagine you were all like, oh yeah, New World. I forgot that existed. And second of all, what is New World Eternum? Is that a new game? What is that? Eternum is like the relaunch for New World. I can't believe that game is still going. I am honestly proud of them for keeping it going this long. Hats off to you guys. I guess it was kind of, maybe it was a shoe-in that New World would make it in there because it is an Amazon Games property. And this is an Amazon series. Armored Core. Cool. Surprised they didn't go with Dark Souls or something, or Elden Ring. But Armored Core? Cool. Spelunky. Interesting. An indie game from like 10 plus years ago? I respect it. Honor of Kings, which I had to look up. It is not Crusader Kings. I got them confused for a second. Honor of Kings is a mobile MOBA. Mobile MOBA. Okay. Sifu. All right. Nominated for Fighting Game of the Year 2022? Was it? Dungeons and Dragons, which, again, like, it's not a video game, really. There's, like, Baldur's Gate. The Outer Worlds, which I like that game. People always shit on that game. I liked it. I thought it was cool. I thought it was fun. I had a good time. Crossfire, which isn't that like the Chinese shooter? Whatever. And then Exodus, which I had to remember. Oh yeah, Exodus Last Light. And just the last one on the bullet point list is PlayStation. Parentheses, which will feature a number of PS games and characters. So you saw like Kratos in the real world and all that. Okay. I forgot to mention too. The first one is Mega Man. This is the only reason I'm interested in this at all, and it's because it's Mega Man. That design looked like it was made by AI. It looked like AI. It had that kind of very sharp contrast between colors with a weird gradient between, like a really thin gradient between the colors that looks sort of unnatural. And it had, and the sort of soft roundness and random detailing that you see in AI art. It looked like that. Mega Man himself also looks kind of weird. He looks kind of like, let me grab a picture. He looks kind of like yeah. He looks like AI art Mega Man, where they just grab like a Pixar basis. He looks white, which is weird. I always pictured that Mega Man would look kind of Asian, just because it's Japanese. Although I guess there's nothing to really support that. Now, on the topic of... Okay, I don't think I ever talked about this on the podcast, but with the release of that Borderlands movie, that was a funny movie, because I remember... I didn't watch it. I don't think it was... I didn't see it. I heard it's actually very unfunny. But the circumstances around it are funny, because I remember watching the trailer and thinking, that looks like Borderlands. And that's not like a... That's not like a put down, right? Everyone was saying, oh, it looks so bad. And I just thought it looked like Borderlands. I was like, I don't know. It looks like kind of Borderlands humor. I figured maybe people who like the games would like it. I don't have enough experience in Borderlands to be interested in it. But when it came out, I got to thinking, like, what games... Because I heard a theory. Someone was saying, superhero movies, they might have lost their luster a little bit in recent years. There's good ones still coming out. It mostly seems like a Marvel... Who's, like, the main actual fucking superhero movie? Like, they're doing the main superhero movies. More like they're just in sort of a creative confusion jumble, right? And they weren't able to put... They're not able to put stuff out at the consistent level of quality that they were before. They've had more misses than hits in recent years. And that naturally is going to make people lose interest, right? I don't think people are losing interest in superhero movies. I think they're losing interest they don't have people. Superhero movies are not meeting the quality standard, or they're not grabbing people, which is just sort of natural. I don't think people are like, I gotta see every superhero movie. I know there's people who are like that. It's more so just like, you have to, because good ones come out and people are like, damn, that was a good superhero movie. It's just when bad ones come out that you really start to feel the fatigue. That's how a lot of trends come and go. I saw someone theorizing that because Hollywood is always going to be unoriginal because they're so scared of taking any sort of a risk. Part of that is actually due to the streaming model, funny enough, because I was, who gave an interview about this? I think Matt Damon. Matt Damon was on like a Hot Ones, and he had this really interesting perspective about how DVD sales are basically non-existent, and because and television viewership is down so much that home releases of movies and reruns on TV are not nearly as viable for making your money back on a film anymore. So it's actually a lot riskier to put a film out now than it has ever been before, which is kind of led in his mind to an increasingly safe, unadventurous Hollywood system. So they're always looking for something safe to adapt, something proven, right? Something proven. They did it with like young adult novels that didn't really take off. Superhero movies. Oh, that's a boom. Marvel's doing them really good. Let's do those. And now that that's starting to slow down, I saw maybe the next thing that Hollywood is aiming their eye at is video game movies. Now, video game movies have still been coming out every now and again, right? There was I totally forgot that Hitman, like Agent 47 movie came out. There was that Assassin's Creed movie. There was the Monster Hunter movie and all that. So it's not like they ever stopped, but if video game movies were going to become the next fad, the next big thing for the next 10 years, I started to wonder, what would be the best games to adapt to a movie? Because it's honestly a lot harder than a comic book, right? There's kind of a formula for doing a comic book movie at this point, especially if it's like an origin story, And it's also probably gotten a little easier because audiences now are a little more adjusted to comic book weirdness. Like, oh my god, I was just watching Fubuki from Hololive. Someone made an edit. She likes to do like watch-along streams of Marvel movies, and there's a guy who like subtitles her streams and like edits the highlights and stuff like that. And I was watching this fucking hour-long thing of her rewatching Endgame, or watching it for the first time. And I was like, you know that whole big final sequence that made everyone come in the theaters? I was thinking about that and I was like, dude, this is some fucking comic book nonsense. I don't think you could have gotten away with this 15 years ago. Oh no, I'm gonna do the math now. 2009, yeah, no, 2009, that's fair. Fuck, 2009? 15 years ago? No, I remember 2009. That's not fair. Take me back. Don't take me back. The economy was terrible. That would not have flown. All that fucking big battle scene at the end, that would have been written off as schlock. That would have been absolute garbage in most people's eyes. It would have been like, what am I watching? Everyone fucking loved it. I had a teacher in high school. A wonderful woman. I want to say she's in her early 50s. She was the French teacher at my high school. I didn't take French. I was just friends with her. So anyway, she was really great. And she was a big Marvel fan and she loved that shit. And I was like, wow, someone in your exact same age demographic 15 to 20 years ago would never have accepted that. So I got off track again. We know how to do comic book movies now, right? Video game movies, there's no real... There isn't a formula yet. Not really, right? Someone's got to do it, you know? Someone's got to figure out... Someone's got to do the Sam Raimi Spider-Man, where, like, this is the perfect superhero origin story movie. It's got the style, it's got the references to the original, it's got the performances, it's got the kind of the capturing some of the sort of camp of it. That has to do with partially Sam Raimi as a director, you know, good director choice. And it's a satisfying story structure told to explain a superhero origin. And we don't really have that for video games, and I don't know if we ever will, because video games are such a varied, strange medium, right? Like they said, we're doing a Mario movie. How do you do a Mario movie? I don't know. Like level 1, level 2, level 3. I mean, that's a way to do it. We're making a Legend of Zelda movie. How do you do that? Is it like Lord of the Rings? Is it going to be like the games? Which game is it going to be like, you know? Because storytelling in games is so different and weird, and so much of it relies on interactivity and the emotion you get from actually controlling a character. And there's so many characters who are just avatars for the player, you know? Like if they were going to do I don't know. I said if they were going to do a Doom movie, right? They already did. But like, right, like that doesn't have the Doom guy in it. It's also more of a Doom 3 movie. You know, what's the thing? My best answer is that it depends on the game, right? I think that a lot of the best games would make for terrible movies if you adapted them straightforwardly. However, because I think that a lot of the best games, are the ones that I'm the most interested in, that I think are like actual, real, fantastic, wonderful pieces of art, rely heavily on the fact that they are interactive and they actually utilize their medium. Like a Deus Ex movie would be boring as fuck compared to the game. It would be like missing half of the point if you couldn't. The point of the game is control. I think if it was me, depending on the property, I think a better strategy would be to make a movie set in the world of the game. I think that would be a better idea. Something set just, in the world. So the other hurdle that these movies have to clear is that they have to actually be good. So the big innovation that Marvel made with their superhero movies was that they were actually good. At the very worst, they were like just kind of okay, but still fun, right? Video game movies have historically been terrible. I think largely because, I don't know, poor director choice, studio interference, bad timing, just so many factors, right? There are very, very few good video game movies. Again, like the Sam Raimi Spider-Man kind of thing. So I think it's a lot easier if you were to make a good movie to just be like, okay, I'm not going to adapt Mario. I'm going to tell a story in the Mario. I'm going to tell a little Mario adventure. There are some like the Mega Man Archie comic is great. There's a lot of great Mega Man manga. Mega Man might be a good actually thing to look at for like how do you adapt something that has barely any story? And the answer is there's a couple different ways. If we got a Mega Man cartoon that was just a straight adaptation of the Archie comic, I would leap for joy. It is so good. So this is kind of like the concept. Maybe you'll scoff at the idea of secret level, but the concept, at the very least, I think has some legs. This isn't going to be a full-on movie. It's going to be like maybe, I don't know, a 30-minute episode set in the universe of this thing, right? Armored Core. Tell a little Armored Core story. Outer Worlds. Tell a little Outer Worlds story. PlayStation. I don't know what the hell they're going to do with PlayStation. Kratos is going to meet Ballsack Boy. Oh yeah, also the Armored Core thing is starring Keanu Reeves. Strange. Very strange. Oh, sorry. There's actually one game that I forgot to mention that is going to be in this series, and it's actually my next topic. There's one game here that I think everyone is really excited for, and that's Concord. Concord is going to be getting a secret level episode. Everyone loves the world and characters of Concord. You know, characters like Man and Green Man and Lady and a robot. So when I say the word Concord, there's probably a couple responses that come out. The first one is, what is that? The second is that out yet? And the answer is yes. It came out, I don't know, a little while ago. I think like a month ago. I'm actually not sure. They pulled off the first time I heard, the only reason I realized that it was out was because I saw an article about how they had held a free weekend. Oh yeah, by the way, the game is $40. They held a free weekend and somehow lost players, which is kind of impressive. Now, there's a lot to be said about Concord. And this is why, okay, about Concord's failure and what we can learn from it. And something has been burning on my mind. I think this is a good chance to talk about it. I vaguely mentioned this earlier, but you know, like capital G gamers, right? And they're like, Concord failed because it has pronouns in bio. All the characters, they have like pronouns and stuff, and they're like fat and brown and shit. And I'm going to tell you right now about the word, I'm going to talk to you about the word woke. I just want to like, I was thinking about this a lot. I slightly scoff. I fully scoff at people who use the word woke, because it is a cliche. I would use the phrase thought terminating cliche. I would advise you not to use the word woke or to think in those terms, because it's kind of a disservice to your own intelligence. Because let's look at this. You can look at Concord and be like, Concord failed because it was trying to appeal to brown people and the queer peoples and that shit, right? And you can just leave it at that and be like, haha, these stupid wokies trying to go woke, go broke. And doing that kind of ignores like the actual reasons that Concord failed. And those reasons are so much more interesting and ask so much more of you to think about and are actually like useful to learn and also real. I should mention that. Also real. No one cares about the fact that the Concord characters have pronouns because no one knows what Concord is. Because no one cared enough to talk about it after its reveal. So let's look at a couple problems with Concord. Number one, it is a hero shooter that released in 2024 when there isn't a big enough gap in the market to really justify it. So a little interesting factoid came out. The game has been in development for 8 years. Now I feel kind of bad for people who are working on this. If something takes more than 5 years to develop, it usually means that something went wrong. Here's another thing. What else came out 8 years ago? Oh yeah, Overwatch. So Overwatch came out, and someone thought, we should make one of those. And they spent 8 years making it. Now, again, I don't think 8 years is a normal dev cycle. Let's say 5 is the longest that a normal dev cycle should take without any huge disasters. Why would it take 5 years or 5+ years? And then you look at the graphics, and it's like everyone is massively mocapped. It's got this insane state-of-the-art realism technology on it, and this realistic art style. The game is just, it's trying to be a realism graphics powerhouse. Why can't I remember his name at the moment? I should be able to, why can't I remember his name? Follow him on Twitter. He's been on podcasts that I listen to. Why can't I fucking... Gene Park. Oh my god, yeah, Gene Park. Gene Park has dubbed it Sony Realism. Sony Realism is just, it's that look. It's that God of War, Last of Us, Horizon, hyper-real look that really appeals to the mainstream, right? They applied that to this game, and guess what? I imagine it took a lot of fucking time. There was an interesting conversation swirling around this game related to why games take so long to make now, and one of the reasons is because asset production takes a long fucking time. In the 90s, sure, the technology was much weaker, but how many polygons are in a character, right? Even if you have like a weak-ass 90s computer compared to the modern day, your characters in general, like in order to create them, in order to create the textures and all that, it's just such a smaller scope. Making something cutting edge at that time required way less people, way less man hours. Now it's like, oh my god, I can't even imagine how many people work on a single one of these characters, from the modeling, that must just take forever. The modeling, the mocap, the texture work, all the polish on them, the animations, oh my god, like, just everything is just this huge commitment. And if you have some sort of catastrophic thing where you have to completely restart, like, you know what I bet happened? I bet there was an engine switch. Because I don't know if 8 years ago you could have gotten something that looked exactly like this. I think there was an engine switch. I don't know what engine it's running on. Because it was the fucking Duke Nukem Forever thing, where they're like, it's taking too long. It's taking forever, and the technology is passing us by, and we need to be cutting edge and realistic, so we're going to do a complete engine switch. I think that happened. I think this game that's my bet. I'm going to say this game came out, or this game was in development for like 3 or 4 years, and they were set to release on track, and then they're like, we have to start over from scratch in a completely new engine, and they had to redo a bunch of fucking work. And it was a total pain in the ass. That's what I'm going to say. I would not be surprised at all if that happened. There's also an alternative, which is that they just spent like 5 years dicking around in pre-production, like what happened with Anthem. And then we're like, oh, we have to make a game? Oh, I forgot about that part. So like, incredibly bloated development, I would call that. A bloated development and budget and all that. Way too big of a scope for what it needs to actually be at. Second of all, this is a hero shooter. Hero shooters live and die based on the appeal of their characters. And you know, every time something like this comes out, it really makes you appreciate how good Valve got it on TF2, right? Every one of those characters, those 9 characters, are just classics. Immediately recognizable. I'm not the first person to go. You can go watch 100 videos about why they're visually designed so well and why it like matches their gameplay, and how you can just look at a single TF2 character and know exactly what they're about, from their gameplay to their personality to like even their background sometimes. Oh, my neck. I think I picked up. The characters in Concord look bad. They look bad. And is it because some of them are fat? Is it because some of them are black? No, not necessarily. There are fat characters and black characters and other things. That hasn't been a problem. Is it because they have pronouns? Who gives a fuck? Normal people genuinely do not care. They don't care. It's because the characters... The thing I saw constantly from different people, the thing I've said, it's such a common reaction that there has to be some sort of like mass consciousness going on here. It looks like someone hit random in a character creator. And yeah, no, it does. There's certain characters who who remind me so much of, again, like AI art. The lady in the big suit of armor, the weird green armor. Some people bash on the color choice. I kind of like the color choice. I like that color. But the whole look of the armor looks like when an AI image generator like steals from Mobius or something. You know, the French artist Mobius. Like when they steal from that kind of a style, and it just kind of ends up looking like, I don't know, blank, passionless, uninspired. None of the characters dress in a way that is appealing or in a way that is stylish by anyone's definition. I understand that this is supposed to be a sci-fi thing, but the characters at least have to be understandable aesthetically from like a regular, like a contemporary modern day perspective. You can't just throw a bunch of random clothes on a character with completely random colors. You know, I saw some people switching some of the colors around online. And yeah, genuinely just changing some colors makes them look way better. You think about, like, clothes are an expression of who a character is. What do they choose to put on in the morning? What clothes have they bought for themselves? You know, it doesn't mean that everyone has to be a fashionista. You know, the fact that someone dresses in maybe a very utilitarian or a very understated, simple style still says something about them, right? And the characters in Concord, you get absolutely zero personality from the way that they dress. It's just kind of like a mishmash. A lot of people call it like background characters from Guardians of the Galaxy is another thing. And this is really not helped by the game's total lack of an art style. You can call it realism. There is a difference between realism and realistic. Realism is an art style. Realistic is an attempted simulation. Realism has rules and goals, and it's why something like Metal Gear Solid can still look good. Because it's like, it's just going for something that is supposed to look realistic, but it's not trying to be a perfect simulation. It's using artistic tools to draw out the real parts of something. So Snake's eyes are shadows, because there's actually a funny post about this the other day about an early version of Snake who had like fully drawn in eyes, and Kojima was like, no, it looks like shit, it looks bad, make his eyes shadows because it looks better. It's not realistic, but it makes him feel more real, and you don't even notice it when you look at the character, right? People say of Concord that it has no art style, And I guess it sort of does have an art style, but the art style is so it's investing so heavily in the realistic simulation of real life that nothing grabs it. Something that lives and dies based off of its characters. No matter how kooky and weird these aliens look, ultimately they're gonna be less interesting than if there was just any sort of exaggeration going on to draw out what's interesting about them. No, the game is almost like not worrying about trying to make anything interesting. There's like a notable lack of enthusiasm in Concord. Like, it's almost not excited to exist. That's how I would describe it. Unenthused. And I've heard the gameplay is pretty good. And I believe it, you know. I don't think the people who say that are lying. I've heard some people say it's really good. And that's, you know, people who work on gameplay, people who work on visuals, they don't, you know, these are usually not the same teams, although they do collaborate, I know, on probably a lot. So I can believe that there's a dissonance there. You know, like, there's the meme that has been, often gets interpreted in bad faith, which is I want games with worse graphics. I want shorter games with worse graphics made by people who are paid more to work less or something. And when I say that, people aren't saying like, I want the game to look like shit. They're saying like, the sentiment is, the intent of that post, of that original image, is that, or quote, I don't know where the exact original is from, is like, dude, it's okay to not be able to see every single pore on the character's face. I'm okay with not seeing that. We would probably both be better off because you'd spend less money and spend less time doing all that. Right? Just, yeah, a pretty interesting failure that I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned from it, and I would love to hear the behind the scenes of Concord, which I imagine will be coming out in the months and years to come, much like how this is just the latest Anthem, I guess. Anthem is also a game that no one remembers, aka the Bob Dylan of video games. It really does make you appreciate good designs, good animations. I was thinking about how, like, in Guilty Gear, for instance, you could tell so much about a character's personality just based on their idle animation and their walking animation. Like, you don't need anything else. It is immediate. The way they look, the way they stand around, the way they walk forward. Just instant personality, right? Just you immediately are grabbed in, and there's something to appeal, right? You need to be interested in grabbing people. You need when you have such a character-focused game like this, you need to have a roster that people look at, and maybe you'll look over most of the roster, but there's at least one character that you look at and you go, who's that person? Who are they? I want to check them out. That's a cool aesthetic, you know? That's how you have to grab people. And something about, I would be so interested to hear the behind the scenes of how the art direction went on this game, right? And all of this whole conversation we just had, that I just had talking at you, is way more interesting, and I feel like just way more valuable than if you just said, yeah, it's because it was woke, right? Saying stuff like that it's a disservice to your intelligence. A thought-terminating cliche when you're making yourself a lot easier to fool, you know? That's all I'm going to say about that. Deadlock was officially announced. Oh my god, did you know Valve has a new game? It's called Deadlock. It's like a MOBA. I have been turned off of the MOBA genre before. I said that I wasn't too interested in it in Deadlock the last time that it came up. I mean, it didn't come up because it's not a real game. No one's heard of it. But I'll try it out. It's a Valve game, you know. It's going to be free. I know that. I know that much. So we'll see, you know. I have some bones with the MOBA genre. Valve has historically, in my opinion, I talk about TF2 in the next video, which I just recorded today. Talk about TF2 in the next video. I think that is the best designed team game of all time. So let's see. I don't know if it's any of the same devs or anyone who understands anything about TF2, but hopefully they take the same lessons from that game. I am mentioning it here because if anyone has a beta code, playtest code, send it to me. Anyway, speaking of shooters, I guess, I don't know how to transition. I played through Quake 4. I finished it earlier today. Quake 4 is a game that I have owned for quite a while, but I never played just because I never got around to it. I'm also not the biggest Quake fan. You know, I'm more of a Doom guy. I think I've talked about this before. Doom is one of my favorite games. Doom 1 and 2 combined, because they're kind of the same game, in my opinion. But Quake, by contrast, didn't really get me in the same way that Doom did. Even though I love Doom and I love that genre, I love the whole genre of the boomer shoots, the arcadey style 90s shooters. People love Quake a lot. A lot of its enduring legacy is because of its multiplayer, right? That's what a lot of people remember from it, and that and Quake 2. I'm not a multiplayer guy with these games, so I can only really speak on the campaigns, and I am not a huge fan of the campaigns for Quake 1 or 2. Quake 1, I guess, as a quick rundown. My throat's getting dry, and I have allergies that are making it feel sore. So I gotta hydrate up. Quake 1 is a pretty good campaign. I am not a fan of the way that a lot of the enemies are very bullet spongy. That was a sort of necessity of the time because the hardware wasn't able to render a lot of enemies on screen like they could with Doom. So there are less enemies, and therefore the enemies had to be a lot tankier. And they're just bullet sponges, which I don't like as much as Doom, where there were a bunch of enemies that you can take out with like a single shotgun blast or something. In Quake, it feels less powerful, I suppose, because everything takes so fucking long to kill by contrast. People love the movement. I'm fine on Quake movement. I weirdly enough, I kind of like Doom movement more. I feel like I go faster in Doom. Maybe it's because I'm bad at Quake. The Quake campaign kind of falls off, especially near the end. Aesthetically, they're going for this Lovecraft thing, and then they end up with like hell stuff again, because you can really feel the moment in that game where the devs threw up, like the guys that did threw up their hands and were like, let's just make it like Doom, which was a real thing that happened. That was actually like part of the development of that game because it was so stressful and chaotic. And they lost John Romero during it. That makes it sound like he died. He basically decided that was going to be his last game there. Chaotic, messy development of Quake 1 leads into Quake 2, which has a very underwhelming campaign again. I think I described it way long ago on this podcast when I played it as the socialism of power fantasies, because it's all evenly distributed. Everyone gets their equally distributed government power fantasy, and none of it feels very good. It feels fine, but it doesn't. You never get the highs that you would in previous id games. It's very formulaic. It's very standardized. It feels like they're trying to keep up with the times in sort of half-hearted ways. Like, the levels are designed in the same way, except where, you know, they're kind of like a little bit labyrinthine, and you sort of explore them and find keys and progress after you find stuff and open up secret doors and stuff. Except now there's like an objective, a line that says like, objective, get the key. Whereas it used to just be, oh, you have to figure out that you need to get this key, and it, like the level design would kind of tell you what to do. It's the exact same here, except now there's a thing that says objective, get the key. And you don't even like notice that there's objectives. Like they just, I think Civi says it great. It's like, yeah, the objectives just complete themselves. Kind of an underwhelming game, just sort of goes by, and very workman-like feeling. Nothing really surprising. Tries to have a little bit of a plot. And then the last boss, you kill it, and you're like, oh, that was the last boss? That was it? Okay. So Quake 3 comes out. It's a purely multiplayer game. I've only played Quake Live, which is basically just Quake 3. I played for like 20 minutes on some random server and got stomped and was like, all right, it's Quake Live. I'm not really interested in the multiplayer-only games. And now we go to Quake 4. And what does Quake 4 decide to do? Because there's a weird... Quake has had a weird identity crisis. Quake 1 is about Lovecraft, except until it decides to not be. Quake 2 is about these alien Strogg guys who are like body horror, bioorganic things, like cyborg thing, aliens. Quake 3 is just multiplayer with no plot at all. Quake 4, not developed by id, developed by Raven Software, who were collaborators with id. They made Heretic. They were the first studio to get the Doom engine, id Tech 2, I believe, officially licensed, and they made Heretic with it, which was overseen by John Romero. Raven, also known for other games. I want to go through a couple. I want to look at the list. Star Wars Jedi Knight, Soldier of Fortune. They did Hexen, which is a sequel to Heretic. They did a lot of pretty cool games. Star Wars Jedi Knight 2, Jedi Outcast, and Jedi Academy. And now they make Call of Duty. So they're in the Call of Duty mines. And that's where they've been relegated. But before that, they made Quake 4. And for Quake 4, they decided to go back to Quake 2 for inspiration. They decided not to continue with the Lovecraft theme, but expand on the alien thing. The alien body horror shit. So Quake 4 is an interesting game. It's a good game, but it also is nothing like its predecessors. So first of all, it has a completely different approach to level design, a totally different philosophy. Quake 4 is the epitome of a corridor shooter. You go down hallways, occasionally leading into larger open areas, and you just go from door to door, shooting monsters that pop out when you walk to certain areas, heavily scripted. Man, you can really tell when Half-Life came out. You can really tell, because, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just like, wow, this is very based on like very linear, not a lot of, basically zero exploration. You're practically on rails. Sometimes you're literally on rails, and you're being taken on a ride through the game. So how does Quake 4 fare as a corridor shooter? Pretty good. It's not exactly my type of game, not a type of game that super appeals to me specifically in the shooter genre, but I think as they go, fairly high quality. It has a decent level of challenge. I played it on the second highest difficulty because I wasn't sure exactly, like, is the hardest difficulty, like, sometimes it's too hard. I usually go for, like, the second highest on these games. And I got a pretty decent challenge out of it. Some parts of it were a little easy, but definitely ratcheted up near the end. Had a decent difficulty curve. The shooting feels pretty good. it feels pretty good. This does also have bullet spongy enemies. There's like nothing that dies in one shotgun blast unless you get very lucky with the damage spread. So it still does have that. So to me personally, that doesn't feel like quite as good, you know? But in general, the moving and shooting feels good. This is going to have spoilers. If I'm going to talk about the movement, I have to get into spoilers. So I'll get into the plot, I guess. So the game opens, and it is a direct sequel to Quake 2, which I found kind of surprising, but sort of neat. You're playing as the same character, the same main character from Quake 2, who has blown up the Macron, which was like their leader, and blown up something else. I don't know. I didn't really care what was happening in Quake 2. And now you are on you're on like the Strog's home planet, or the Strog. They say Strog. You're on the Strog's home planet, and you're launching an assault on it to take them out once and for all. And that's what the game is about. It is Space Marine, hoorah, military, shoot some aliens, Starship Troopers kind of thing. So very simple premise. And where do I start exactly with it? This is a pretty good looking game for 2005. The textures are a little low quality, but other than that, like in terms of lighting, holds up very well, I have to say. Character models, animations, it's a good looking game. The movement at the start of the game is not great. I was a little like iffy on it, because when I think of Quake, I associate Quake with fast, frenetic, very fluid movement, you know? It's like the original speedrun game. Not the original, but a very important speedrun game in the history of speedrunning. And when you jump into Quake 4, and the base, so like the running speed is about as fast as like Quake 2's walking speed. It is very slow and methodical, and it gets a little bit old. I was like, if the whole game was going to be like that, I don't know if I would have liked it too much. I would have been probably a little more lukewarm on it. You know, it doesn't feel great. I love shotguns in these games, and having slow movement like that naturally nerfs weapons like the shotgun. So I was delighted to find out that there is a horrifying sequence in the middle of this game. After like the first third of the game, you are abducted. There is a genuinely great sequence where you are abducted by the Strog, and you're on like a conveyor belt. So, okay, the Strog always had one of the cool parts, and what I appreciate that Raven really leaned into when they were taking the Quake 2, all that stuff from Quake 2 and expanding on it, is they really leaned on the body horror element of the Strog. The Strog were like these bizarre, fleshy, mutant-looking things with all sorts of mechanical parts and cyborg elements and exposed wiring, and they looked gross. They're like gross and grimy. And in Quake 2, they have all this little attention to detail and these tiny little animations that they do, which the player often doesn't even see. There's just like the Strog are like visually a compelling enemy force in terms of just how gross and horrifying they are. And it's kind of implied that they take people and then they take organic life and then modify it to strogify it, the strogification process. So there's a part in this game, and they really show you in Quake 4, like, there is some gnarly imagery in this game of like human experimentation and surgeries and cutting people up and just like a severed head stuck into like a bunch of wires, or just a torso that's like wriggling around. Like it's gross, it's nasty. And you get captured and you're on this conveyor belt, like strapped into like a bed, and it's so grisly. You're like, you're going through you're being put through the strogification process, and you see most of it. The thing is you're not the first in line. There's a guy in front of you, so you see everything that's about to happen to you happen to that guy, and you just see like the big needle come down, and like you don't see the exact, because of the angle, like you don't see the exact insertion, but you see the arm go down, and then behind like the back of the bed, like the pod that he's in, and then like the screaming, and then you're like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, and then you get a first person, like it's a first person fucking live surgery. Like crazy. Very memorable sequence. Like oh my god, the fucking buzzsaw comes down, and like I'm going like, oh, like I'm like cringing and like jumping back in my seat because it's so gnarly. It's so intense. Very, very memorable sequence that really spices it up, and I think sells you on how evil the Strogg are and how twisted they are as a kind of one-dimensional alien villain, right? They you see like how fucked up they are. And there's this whole like mind control process that gets interrupted, and now you're like part Strogg. You have like Strogg technology in you and stuff, and there's cyborgs and all that shit and all that. And the first thing you notice after you are Stroggified is, hey, I move a lot faster now. So a third of the way into the game, you basically get classic Quake movement back, and it feels way better. It feels way better. I was very relieved when I realized what was going on and what had happened, and that they were kind of building up. Okay, it was actually kind of effective that you start off the game feeling a little bit weak and slow, even though it doesn't make too much sense coming from, this is supposed to be the same guy from Quake 2. And now you're able to like jump and run way faster. You can't do like rocket jumping. That's because there's a lot more self-damage in this game, but that's not a real problem because you never really need to rocket jump because the levels are all, they're just hallways. They're just they're like mostly enclosed spaces. And the level design is mostly based around like, if you can't get up to an area, you're probably supposed to go there later for something else, you know? So the game really, it's funny because the game, it starts off okay, you know, I wasn't super into how it played, and then it kind of just gets better. The game really does pick up after that first third, after the Stroggification scene, and I think the level design is pretty consistent, although you do get very familiar with the game's tricks. I realized eventually that if I wanted to safely reload, I would just have to stop moving, because if I walked any further, I could trigger an enemy to come out. It is very much like a jump scare house. It's a spook house where you walk through and, you set off the scare to come out. There is a good amount of horror in this game. There's a very clear attempt to kind of, it's sort of funny. This game is 2005. It is 2005. Yeah, it is 2005. Yeah. So, kind of makes me let me just wait. Hang on. Doom 3 was 2004. That is so interesting, because when I was playing it, I was like, man, this really feels like a reaction to the reaction to Doom 3. Like, so first of all, it's a lot more of a horror game. It's like a horror shooter. I would compare it. I would call Quake 4 a horror shooter. So much dark. This is a dark game. Even when I turn the brightness up, I usually turn the brightness up because I hate squinting to see stuff in games. It was still hard to see shit. And you've got to use your flashlight. So in Doom 3, they did this similar kind of horror shooter thing. And one of the deals with that game was you had a flashlight, but you could only take the flashlight out if you put your weapon away. So people joked about how, like, there's no duct tape on Mars, you know? You can't just duct tape. What, you can't just duct tape it to your weapon? And so that's why, so there was like a duct tape mod that you could have your flashlight out with your weapon, and the re-release of Doom 3 had that just as a built-in feature. And a lot has been said of the effects of that on the game. That, number one, yeah, it does make the game easier to see, but also the game was designed with, gun versus visibility in mind. Quake 4 feels like a good balance between that, because only 2 guns actually have flashlights on them. The pistol, which you're probably not going to be using, and that has infinite ammo, so you're always going to be able to switch to it to use the flashlight. And the machine gun, which is the second gun that you get, which is just the rapid-fire hit-scan weapon of the game. Pretty good machine gun, all things considered. So, but it's not very powerful. It's not especially powerful. And so, especially later on in the game, you want to have your strong weapons out. You want to have, like, the nail gun. You want to have the rocket launcher. You want to have even like the shotgun's pretty strong. And none of those have flashlights on them. So if you want to have visibility, you do have to make a trade-off. You can still shoot, you can still defend yourself, but you have to make the trade-off of weaker weapon versus more visibility. And I think it's actually pretty good. I actually like the way that it was implemented. I felt like I was genuinely making decisions about what I was going to be able to react to. Because there's enemies who just blend into the dark. There were multiple times where I literally walked into an enemy because it was so dark, and I didn't even know it was shooting me. Because they were hiding around a corner, and I walked past the corner, and then they were there, and I was, oh my god, they're there. Like, I got jump scared, basically. So it's like, it's a real thing. The game feels designed around it. It's very simple in a lot of ways. You do get very used to the game's tricks and the way that it flows. There's gonna be a locked door, and then you'll be talking to someone, and then you're in this room, and you have to go talk to someone, and they're like, "Great, let's go further," and then you can literally just see the door unlock in front of you, go from like red to green. And it's like, all right, it's very transparent in the way that it's designed, in the way that all the flags are set up. Not in a bad way. I think if it was longer, it might get a little bit tiresome. But it's a pretty modest. How much time did I spend on it? 11.9 hours. Let's take that down, because I think I walked away for a second, or for like a little bit. Let's take that down from like roughly 12 hours to like 10 hours. Yeah, I think 10 hours is probably fair. Like 10 hours on one of the harder difficulties is pretty decent for a game that has that. It didn't feel like it was getting stale. The last couple levels go by very quickly. I thought they were going to get longer as I went on, but no. There's one that's like literally an elevator ride, and that's it. And nothing even, you don't even have to do anything on an elevator ride. You just watch something happen from outside. Yeah, I mean, okay, it does carry the id Quake tradition of having kind of a lame final boss. There was like a boss earlier. It's the first boss you fight with a health bar, the like corrupted soldier guy, the mutated soldier dude, who gave me way more trouble than the final boss. Final boss was like a complete pushover. I beat it in one try. Just shoot rockets at him, to shoot rockets and nail guns and the black hole gun and the electro beam and all that, and just shoot that at him. He dies very quickly. And then I was like, oh, okay, now there's a second phase. And then the second phase is just as easy. And then, oh, there's a third phase. The third phase is maybe even easier. And then it's over. And I was like, all right, cool. That was it. I feel like most id games have a curse of ending with a, that was it. But yeah, pretty solid game all around. Pretty good like horror shooter. Leans into the I think the good parts, the compelling parts of Quake 2 that were interesting. Not a huge fan of like the corridor shooter aspect of it, but for what it is, the action is pretty consistent. The way they build up tension is good. It can get predictable at times, but there were also points where I was caught off guard. Not a perfect game by any means, but honestly, pretty good. It does contribute to the Quake identity crisis thing. I think most people agree now that if you were going to do a Quake reboot, you would really want to expand on the Lovecraft stuff from the first game, because that feels like the least developed. Honestly, I think if you liked the Strogg stuff, I think Quake 2 and Quake 4 are probably pretty satisfactory, all things considered. There's even a couple references, like things that feel like they're straight out of Quake 1. Like there's a couple music stings and stuff like that. I might be misremembering. Oh, the zombies. Yeah, the zombies in this game are just like the Quake zombies. I thought that was cool. Yeah, I think the Strogg stuff has been pretty well explored, and this game does a good job of giving that good development. What I would want to see from a remake would be the Lovecraft stuff, the weird creatures, the cults and things like that. I think that's the most compelling place that they could go with the series. That's what I would like to see. It's also not a theme that's very explored, you know? I'm good on Space Marines in video games for now, besides Space Marine 2, which I'm going to be buying next month. So, yeah, Quake 4, good game. Good game. And with that, I think I'm going to bring this to a close. If you've been listening this far, thank you for listening to me ramble. If you have a question, feel free to leave it down in the comments below, and I will definitely get to it next time, but please phrase it in the form of a question, because I'm not just going to read your thoughts out loud. Video is in progress. It has been kind of a breeze to write and produce and film and everything, so I'm actually pretty excited to get into it. I think it's something that I have definitely... something I got to get off my chest. It'll make sense if you're a long-time listener of this podcast. Something I got to spit about. Yeah, do I have anything else? Patreon, and I have the coffee if you want to donate to me, and yeah. Bye.